Hello and welcome to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. I'm Jake, that's Sean. Sean, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great, Jake. I wonder if eagle-eyed viewers will notice that some things seem familiar.
You know, I feel very similar to how I felt last week. You know, it's crazy, consistency in my life. But we've got a jam-packed episode for you of several different things, several different topics, some good, some potentially evil, depending on how you view it. But Sean and I are probably looking to have some good conversation around that to maybe not doomsday a lot of you folks within the last week that you've been having. But this episode could also be severely outdated depending on what the Pokemon Company does. And with the history of the Metapod podcast, the Pokemon Company is really good at knowing what we're going to talk about in the episode for some reason before it releases, because they'll release news the day before on the topic. So anyways, Sean, let's just jump right into the news. Let's get into the nitty gritty, what people are here for. The special set Pokemon Horizons has been announced. It's going to be released in August, and it's going to feature a ton of anime characters, anime related things, right? Promoting the anime. This is pretty typical. We've seen this before on cards, different promo cards. It was funny though when one of the cards was announced. It's called Terapagos and Friends. It's a 90 HP basic Pokemon, has a 4 colorless attack that does 100 times damage, 100 times for each of your Pokemon. And I remember people seeing this card and freaking out because
It's broken.
each of your Pokemon doing up to 600 damage is insane. But one of the things is that it does not have a regulation mark, so it's not going to be legal for play. It's probably going to be very similar to the what is it? A lot of the celebrations, the anniversary, the 25th
yes.
anniversary set that we did, where they like remade those old cards and stuff like that, where they didn't really have like a legality stamp, right? Because if you see in here, they've got some old ones that they've got in there, and some of the promos do have it, but this one, if you look at the Terapagos in the PokeBeach article, the Terapagos and Friends doesn't have any regulation stamp, but the Sprigatito and the Fuecoco do. So you're looking for that letter in the corner.
I will also say there is no version of this card that is regulation size. It's only a jumbo.
Oh, is it only a jumbo?
Yes, yes.
Well, no, hold on that one, because didn't Matthew play the? You remember when Matthew played the jumbo cards to the event?
They altered those rules though. They changed the rules after that.
Did they?
Yes.
So
jumbo
just for
cards are no
clarification,
longer standard
okay, they're
legal.
no longer allowed. Okay, yeah.
I think actually the judges at the event did rule halfway through the event that it was not standard legal, like because it didn't fit into like another category of rules, like it couldn't be whatever. But I will say also, like, if you read the card, I read it at first and I didn't know it was a jumbo, and then I looked over it. 100 times damage for each of your Pokemon. Each of your Pokemon where? In play? In the deck? In discard? Like, each of my Pokemon that I have in a binder? Like, it's so undescriptive. This can't be real.
You're actually just playing like... You're playing like an extremely aggressive version to like find energy search and double colorless. Like you're playing energy lotto and stuff like that. You're playing like 36 Pokemon and you're doing like 3,600 damage.
Right. I'm like, I will say maybe when this card got first leaked, revealed, whatever, and it wasn't in the context of jumbos, I could see people freaking out because, even though it's 4 colorless, 100 times for each of your Pokemon, even if it was just in play or even if it was just on your bench, I'm like, excuse me, 500 damage?
I didn't even think about like including the discard pile, the lost zone, like the prizes, the deck. You get to use this attack and you get to just look through your whole deck. But
or like each of the Pokemon in real life that you have, well, that's 0. So you do 100 times 0. You never do any Pokemon aren't real. It's very sad.
This is going to release in Taiwan and Hong Kong, promoting the debut of Pokemon Horizons and Stellar Miracle, a new set that will release in the countries on the same day. So for all of you that, chase around promo cards and stuff like that, this is a cool promo card, especially if you like the anime or have young ones that like the anime. I've heard the anime has been really good lately in terms of like the animation production, the introduction of these new characters and moving on from Ash has been really enjoyable.
Hmm.
So very, very fun. I would say it's going to cost about $15 USD for the product. It's going to come with the jumbo card of the Terapagos that's absolutely broken, best card ever printed, with Sprigatito and Fuecoco promos, and then 2 packs of Stellar Miracle.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask if I can proxy that Terapagos and Friends in my colorless GLC deck. Is
You could
that,
do like
is that okay?
what is it? You could do like a unlimited or internal format,
Eternal
right? Yeah,
format
yeah,
with
yeah.
this is
Request to Justin to
yeah.
ban this card in
Yeah.
internal.
Justin, let us know. Is this card legal in eternal format?
There's no
I know the
way.
answer. I know the answer, but if we
But
all ask hard enough.
if you do want a legal card to play with, there is a new special 151 Voltorb promo being awarded specifically to tournament staff. I believe through the professor's program that it was obtained. It's a cosmic reverse hollow in the Voltorb, just the Voltorb from the 151 set with that stamp and reverse hollow. But a lot of people are heralding it as probably one of the more rare promos to be printed in terms of English cards. We've seen Voltorb as a professor's program card go for several $100s on eBay. And so this one, there were only about 100 to 120 given out. So if you're trying to complete that 151 master set, be ready to fork over your life savings and child's college fund, I will say, or just proxy the card and take the L.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's cool seeing. Is this artwork also unique? Is this like a new artwork, or is it just stamped and foiled in a new way?
Let me, you keep talking on that.
Okay.
I will
Well,
look that up.
I was gonna say though, it is cool seeing English get like making like really exclusive, interesting cards. Because we do have like staff promos and other things for like local judges, but
Mhm.
it's a nice thing to give out to people at big events because I know that the judges who go to events like NAIC, they're like selected within a smaller group of judges in the overall pool. But I don't know how much they get paid, but I can guarantee you it's not a ton of money. Like they probably get paid a normal amount,
I don't
but
know. I think it's in product. Like they get
yeah.
free. I know Azul, for anyone who watches like Azul Garcia Griego's live stream, he started a new podcast called Yap or something like that, where they just yap about certain topics that are causing drama. And I know it was either their first episode or the second episode, they brought on a judge, like an actual person who is judge certified, and they talked about like, and I know at one point they talked about the pay exactly for staff members and stuff. I think you get like travel and stuff paid for, but
Yeah.
then you get paid in product.
Interesting. I mean,
Um,
I know a lot of judging can be like volunteer-ish based. I mean, certainly almost all your local
yes.
judges,
Hmm.
stores may choose to pay them, but for the most part, it's a volunteer-based system.
Yeah.
Um, I just want
Unless
to,
they like work for the store and have an appointed job to run events, like their job is event coordinator.
Jake. I also just want to add a minor, not correction, but inclusion of information in the story,
Hmm.
which is there was 100 to 120 of the reverse hollow versions of this Voltorb given out, but there is only 12 versions of the Cosmos foiling,
Oh,
and those were
oh,
given
I
out.
got the Cosmo mixed up then.
Yeah, and those were given out to the 12 mentors at NAIC. So the one that is considered like the super rare English promo is the fact that there's only 12 of them in existence of the Cosmos Hollow. That's
Yes.
crazy.
And I will say two things. First, for all the professors and judges and things like that that got invited to Worlds, congratulations. Those invites came out not too long ago. Just want to give a quick shout out to all you for your hard work. And for those of you that maybe didn't go, don't worry, your time is coming. You did great stuff this season. Keep up the good work. But also, this Voltorb is the same art as it was in the main
Okay.
151 set.
So just new foiling on some of them and a stamp. Still,
Which I feel like is pretty typical with the stamped promos that
yeah.
we see, aside from like pre-release kits. I feel like the stamped promos are usually almost always the same art. It just
Yeah.
has the stamp on it, right? Hashtag GameStop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If that with GameStop. Sometimes it's just the same card. How do you know it's a promo? You don't.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it for this one. The next one on our list of news stories, just blowing through them today, but short news week.
It's that time where
Yeah.
like we're still waiting for Worlds and there's no big tournaments. We might try to talk about some deck lists and some events that have been going on in the coming weeks, but for now, we'll just get over these couple things that have been happening since we've been traveling.
This next story is talking about TCG Live, giving us some stats. The Pokemon Company released an Instagram video that released some of the stats for the first year of TCG Live's life. And while some of them don't really mean anything, they're PokeBeach put together a comparison to Yu-Gi-Oh's Master Duel app, which was widely acclaimed. I think people who play Yu-Gi-Oh really did like the Master Duel app. So the one stat that stood out though was 60 million games played on TCG Live. And apparently Konami reported that the app Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel in their first year saw 2.1 billion games played. So Jake, what do you make of that comparison? Is there anything there?
I'm going to be honest, like this doesn't super surprise me. I mean, yes, I specifically rag on Pokemon TCG Live all the time. The game's been out for so long and it does so bad. And they're making improvements. I will give them that. And they here and there they fix things, but anyways. So there's a chunk of the player base that play the game that don't play the game, right? You and I included, right? We
Yeah.
play the game IRL, but we exclusively pretty much play IRL. We don't play live really. Then you have another set of people that maybe do play it, but they do a quick game. They just do a one game. I don't know if Master Duel is accessible on the phone as it is like with the iPhone, right? With Pokemon TCG Live, you can do it on the iPhone if your iPhone doesn't explode due to overheating. Your Android, tablets and stuff like that. So I don't know accessibility wise. A lot of people probably just get on to complete maybe daily rewards. Just get on to collect more resources to be able to own more cards, things like that. The collectability as well is a lot less in the game than it was in the regular Pokemon trading card game client because they took out all the cards prior to it, right? Like there's
Yeah.
still no expanded
That's
on
true.
it. So there's like another section of people that didn't transfer over from the Pokemon trading card game to Pokemon trading card game live. And then also you have kids. So either like the kids, because Pokemon widely outsells Yu-Gi-Oh by a gigantic margin, right? What was it? It was 2023 earnings in billions of yen for the Pokemon trading card game was 133.7, while Yu-Gi-Oh, the second place best-selling trading card game, was 47.1. So even though Pokemon widely outsells it, it's that a lot of these like kids and stuff and these smaller people and most people in general just collect the cards IRL rather than play the game. So it's not super surprising, but it's an interesting promo to do because I want to know how many downloads there were right? Because
Yeah, we
in
they're not going to
like
tell us that.
I'm sure Azul has or Andrew Mahone has like 100,000 games each, on live because of how much they play. So
Yeah.
I'm super curious how many downloads there are, but they won't tell it. They'll just tell how much damage, cards sent to the lost zone, and how many Bidoofs were knocked out.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have no idea how many people downloaded it. But I don't know. Like, I think what matters more for Pokemon is how does this compare to TCGO? Because that was the
Hmm.
old client. This is the new client. I would assume that more people are playing this than TCGO simply from the fact that this is available on mobile. Like,
Yes,
you've
and also
introduced.
because it's honestly more accessible
Yeah,
in general, right? They give free decks every like ladder reset.
yeah. So, I mean, clearly this is something where the I do think that this client probably has been more successful in terms of keep getting and maintaining a player base than PTCGO. However, and this is something that I tell people, it's an opinion of mine, but I largely see TCG Live and the entire competitive Pokemon scene. This is going to be maybe a little controversial, Jake, but I see
Ooh.
the entire competitive Pokemon scene as probably closer to a lost leader for the Pokemon company than it is to something that makes them money.
Oh, no, no, no. I think that's a pretty lukewarm
You think it's a lukewarm?
point.
I mean,
I
not
think the player base is such a small segment of the whole scale that is Pokemon cards. And not
yeah.
saying that Pokemon ignores,
No, they certainly
the
don't.
player base, but in terms of, you know, high stakes business decisions and smart logistical business decisions, this game's probably been pretty good. And also why they've decided to make Pokemon TCG Pocket,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's still being in production, that comes out later this year, that is supposed to be way more popular than live. So,
Yeah. I'll be interested to see though, like how Pocket affects TCG Live. They are different
mhm.
things, right? You're not playing the same game. But
Yeah, it's quite literally a different game. It's a different way to play Pokemon, but more of the collection aspect than playing aspect.
I do wonder like if there'll be like if say a parent, like their kid gets into Pokemon, right? And their parent is like, "Well, how do I give them Pokemon on their phone?" Well, today the only real way to do that in any sort of capacity that has a game is TCG Live, which,
Hmm.
let's be frank, if you're a kid, it probably is a little daunting in some respects, right? Because
Oh
when
yeah.
I was a kid, I didn't play the game correctly. So like, yeah. But then but that there still probably is a certain number of kids and parents who like push their kids to download the app and play the app, where Pocket will appeal to a broader audience, but they'll certainly take away some of those people that would have gone into live, who now like Pocket is a better fit for them. So I'll be interested to see what those numbers look like. I mean, we're not going to see them; they're never going to tell us. But that'll
Yeah.
be interesting for someone internally with the analytics team. Be interesting for them. It'll be an interesting day. So
We politely say please in asking the Pokemon company to put out that information as well. Just especially with a please at the end with a little smiley face.
exactly. But that sort of concludes our official news
Hmm.
segment of the podcast. We're gonna do a quick dive into speculation.
Which was originally what we thought at the time. Hello, everybody. This is Jake in the future, or I guess in the past by the time you're listening to this, but we pre-recorded this episode, if you can't tell, pretty early because of Sean and I's like travel. Like, I'm moving into a new house here in Las Vegas, so it's a little busy for us. We pre-recorded it, and of course, Pokemon had to release right after we recorded and Sean started traveling, the 2025 season and what they were going to do with it, which is the topic of discussion at hand that you're about to hear us, speculate, give our thoughts, what should happen, etc., etc. So it's a little bit outdated. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of it. I'm not going to give too much of my opinion on how I feel about it. I want to save that for next week's show. once Sean is back and we're, back in full force doing it. So what happened in the 2025 season, which has already started by the time this episode released, so hope you're having fun in your season. It's really limiting the world's invites. 125 TCG Masters for North America. So they've got this breakdown right here on the age divisions and continents as well, or like regions. USA and Canada is going to be 125 masters invited to the World Championships. Europe is the same at 125, Latin America at 100, Oceania at 20, Middle East and South Africa at 10. Now, they're lower across the board. So seniors are 100s, 50, 10, and 5, and then juniors are 75s, 50, 10, and 5 in terms of the breakdown. So it's going to be interesting because we talk about how there's like 270 masters for North America this year, and now this will be cut in half. And there's a couple other things that are going to be going on in terms of like the best finish limit, right? The best finish limit will be lowered as well. And then there's also like a couple other mentions for like regionals and special events. The top 4 finishers at international championships earn an invitation. So they're like giving out more invitations based on the results, kind of like what we saw in the previous year, but they're cutting down the amount of people based on points. How many points you have to qualify for Worlds. You got to be at the top 125. So we're going to get into more of that next week in our official opinions. I just want to give you like, this is what it officially is, and we're going to talk about the speculation side when it's not really speculation because of the unfortunate timing that was the Pokemon Company and our busy schedules and traveling. So we do go into it a little bit of what, like this scenario, what we think of this kind of scenario, because we predicted that this could be something that happened, and so we give our opinion. So I still think it's valuable to listen to. So I'm gonna be done yapping. That's all for me. Anyways, enjoy the rest of the episode.
And then we'll go into a quick analysis maybe of a previous year. But Jake, you sent me a link to a tweet. I pulled it up, but there's nothing really here for me. Can you explain what was on the tweet?
Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk in terms of rumors that have been going around. You may be seeing on Twitter the last couple weeks of people talking about regional locations, right? Regional dates for the upcoming year, not officially announced by the Pokemon Company, but you could call up a convention center and say, hey, are you holding a Pokemon event for whatever? And they can be like, yes, here's the date, because that contract has already been signed. That date's been decided for probably a couple years now, so that is information. We've even seen which world championships is coming in. Is it in San Francisco?
Oh, 2026.
You remember when
Yeah,
20. We already know where 2026 Worlds is before we know where 2025 Worlds is.
Yeah.
Because the convention center signed the contract and they wanted to start promoting it. So that's normal. But the next kind of run of the rumor mill, and again, take this as a rumor. You don't have to take this as true. This is literally just a trust me, bro, source kind of deal. But it was brought up that there was going to be a huge change in the invite structure for the Pokemon trading card game relating to the upcoming Play Pokemon season. And it's been not exactly specifics, but a lot of the key points that make it a huge difference in the structure is lowering the best finish limits, right? That's point number 1. Number 2, there is no point threshold, right? So instead of trying to aim for 600 points, right, in an entire season, that is no longer a thing anymore. And only top X people get invites. So I think with this tweet implying that if you're top 32 in America or the North America, you get invited, right? Doesn't matter if that's 100 points, doesn't matter if that's 2,000 points or whatever. If you're top 32, you're top 32 and you get invited in. Now, we don't know the exact number. So it could be like top 64, top 128, top 256 or something like that. But that's kind of the idea that I think has come around alongside of this. And who knows if that will still hold the regional automatic invite, right? I know with NAIC regionals, the automatic qualification to the world championships has been well received, right? And has been liked by many people, and including myself. I think if you win a regional, you should automatically go to Worlds. And so I think that's a great thing. And so who knows if that will continue to change. It'll be a little bit before Pokemon officially announces what they're going to do with the season. This is just leaks. This is just rumor mill stuff. So again, nothing official, but there's been some people that really feel one way about this, and then there are a lot of people that feel another side about this. So Sean, hearing this, I would love to know how do you feel personally by hearing this rumor? And again, nothing factual, just rumor.
Like, so in theory, if they were to lower the best finish limits even more, and then completely take away this like point threshold, so like if you get like 500 points or 600 points or whatever, you qualify. So just eliminating that and saying wherever it shakes out at the end of the season, if you're top X, who knows what X could be, but they'll probably do it. I imagine they'd still do it by region. They would still have North America.
I would think so too.
Yeah. So like they would just say like, we want this many people as a percentage of, expected players in this region. This many people as the same percentage of whatever. I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks if they did do the structure, it makes sense, because I do think that if you were to make best finish limits more harsh,
so best finish limits as in like, instead of, I think it's like 6 cups and challenges or 8 cups and challenges, it would instead be like 4.
Sure. Yeah. And 4 feels, I don't know, like whatever. I think the best finish limit, whether or not they have them at regionals, that's the one that matters to me. Because the difference between 4 and 6 as a best finish limit is really a difference of like, what? At most 130 points.
It's really like, did you attend 6 events or did you attend 4 events?
Right. Like, I don't think that number, if it's only cups and regionals, I don't think that the total number of points on the table matters. I think regionals is where that's going to matter. If they impose a 4 best finish limit at regionals, that's when I think you'll really see people be like, oh. So I think there could be a positive change there in that it will put a lot of people who feel this pressure to go to all of these events to hit the number. It'll remove that pressure, because like the number itself, at least for America, and we'll see the numbers after this conversation, hitting 600 in America was incredibly difficult for Americans. I will just say that. It was, statistically, Jake. I will get to the numbers. Statistically, nobody made it. Statistically speaking, you had a greater chance of like a bunch of different things happening than ever getting 600 points.
I think though that
in America, it was easier in other places.
Do we have like last year's numbers as well? I know we have this year's numbers of people, but do we have last year's?
I could spend some time looking that up.
Yeah. So I think, and this may be just because, I see the vocal people, talk about it on social media. So I don't have any information. That's why I wanted to bring up last year's numbers before we really dive into that point. But I know there was a couple of people that really talked about how, we talked about at the beginning of this year, how like, oh my gosh, this 600 point threshold is going to be really, really tough to hit. And I pinned a message in our chat. Sean brought it up. I completely forgot about it, but Sean brought it up before we started recording. We made guesses on how many masters were going to make worlds this year in North America. And I saw a lot of people a couple weeks ago after NAIC kind of talk about how like 600 points wasn't as difficult as they thought it was to hit. Um, and so, but overall, that could be just the small amount of people like that I see on Twitter, and could, and like what you're alluding to, how like it could be just a small percentage, of people that actually made it in comparison to previous years. That may be the case, but
Let me see.
I'll just say this: I don't know if I hate this proposed idea, this rumor of the lower best finish limits, no points threshold, and only top X get invites. I made a tweet about this that I think is at least a point to bring up. Whether you love it or hate it, is whatever. I do agree that going backwards is not good. Going backwards in quotation marks, because I don't know what else to call it, in terms of, it will be more difficult to qualify for the world championships, right? So theoretically, that is going backwards, making it more difficult. But the same practice, the same sort of invite system, I believe, is in Pokemon Japan. It's in Magic the Gathering. It's in One Piece, right? And One Piece might be a little bit too young to think about this, but like those three card games are successful card games right now, I would say. So I don't think it will kill the game. I do think it will hurt a little bit, but just like a boo-boo, right? A paper cut, something that stings for a little bit, but then you get over, pretty quickly. Similar to the 600 point threshold. Like, I don't remember the last time I heard somebody, at least on Twitter, rant about, you know, 600 points being way too much or something like that. But John, how's your search going?
Okay. The problem with the previous year is that I think for Japan, wasn't it a combination of 2 years worth of points, like pre-COVID?
I'm going to be honest.
Oh, that was London.
I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
We didn't. I also don't think we got locals back fully until halfway through last year or something. So
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
The best comparison we would have is like all the way back to 2019, which is not a good comparison. So, but I'm actually going to pull up on my screen. You will not be able to see this, Jake, but I'm going to pull up on my screen for comparison the players who earned even 1 CP from each region and the players who qualified from each region.
Oh gosh! Wow, crazy numbers! Wow, look at that. That's insane.
This is
me and the audio listeners really are amazed by this.
Well, I didn't do this. Thank you to Zapdos TCG.
Yeah,
he did a video about this a couple weeks ago. So for some references, if you are in, let me see here. If you are in the Middle East and South Africa, which is a new region for the Pokemon Company, I think maybe this year or last year, relatively new region. 182 players earned CP. 28 of them got an invite. That's a 15% of the player base, roughly, got an invite, which is super, super high. But again, it's a completely new region. There's probably there's like no regionals there. There's like very little chance for people to earn CP without flying lots of places. So that one I give a complete pass, to be frank. Oceania also, I think, suffers from the similar, like, there's not as many events. Now, there's certainly more than Middle East South Africa, but 710 people earned at least 1 CP in Oceania. 124 of them got invites, which makes it about 17.5% of all players in Oceania got invited to Worlds. So those are the smallest regions. Jake, I want to know, before we go into Latin America, Europe, and North America, how do those percentages feel to you?
I think those percentages are fine, especially when you talk about a region that is growing and doesn't necessarily have events. I feel like a lot of these Pokemon players that qualify for Worlds are more than likely a player that has played in another card game, right? That is interested in getting into Pokemon, playing seriously in Pokemon. So in my opinion, it makes sense that the number is higher because, you have experienced players that are used to traveling, maybe are good with traveling to events and things like that. And, are more interested in taking the grind.
Fair.
And honestly, it's probably it's probably not that hard in those. I mean, it in terms of how do I want to say this? If you want to qualify, it is pretty reasonable to be able to qualify in that region. If
Perhaps,
you
yeah.
take it seriously.
So knowing that, let's move to the big regions, the regions with like thousands of players.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage do you think, if you were Pokemon, what percentage of players do you think should earn an invite for it to feel like getting a Worlds invite feels special?
And are you talking about this year, right?
This year.
We're talking about this year.
Yeah.
I would, in my honest opinion, and I don't know if this will be a hot take. I think it should be less than 1%.
You think it should be less than 1 out of every 100
I
players?
I am in the camp coming from an athletic background. I think Worlds should be difficult to get,
Okay.
and pretty exclusive. Like we talk about,
That's
I can
fair.
bring up why I think later, because I think my explanation, makes a lot of sense with the way that I'm thinking. But I think it should be like 1% of players make it to Worlds.
Okay. So, Latin America, there is 13,500 players that got any
Mhm.
CP. Now, that's not to say there's probably more players who played in events but did never get one CP, whatever.
Yes.
Right? But of people who got CP that would be on the registration, the list, 299 players got an invite in Latin America, which is about 2.2%.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with that. Like having almost 300 players from Latin America be represented in the World Championships. It's a big region. That seems right, right?
Mm-hmm.
Europe had about double the number of players, 27,000 that got CP. They also had exactly 299 people who qualified for Worlds.
So that means they have like 1%.
They have 1%. So there you go. There's your 1%.
Yeah.
The US and Canada has let me see here, almost 3 times as many players who got 1 CP as Europe. So 77,000.
Okay.
77,000
That's a lot of
players,
people.
which means that we probably have 150,000 regular players in the US, somewhere in that range. 269 people got an invite, 30 less than Latin America and Europe in North America, which is 0.35%.
Okay.
And
cool.
As a total number, I will say this, as a total number, you have a pretty even distribution regionally, right? You have 269, 299, 299. And then for Oceania and Middle East, there's just fewer players, but it's still, you'll have a decent representation. So that's the ones we have percentages for. But the reason I say that, like getting an invite in the US, when people I think are upset about this new system making it harder to get an invite, I think they're coming from the perspective that less than basically 1/3% of all players who got 1 CP got an invite to Worlds. So 1 out of every 300, which means for a major city, right, like New York, there may only be 5 to 10 players in all of New York who got a Worlds invite.
Yeah, I think that's how it should be. I'm going to be honest.
So, but if somebody then told you, we're going to make it harder to get an invite in America now, so there'll only be 1 out of New York City.
I don't hate it.
Nobody from Las Vegas, statistically, nobody from.
All right.
I mean, because to me, like I start.
That's
to think,
fine.
like,
I mean, just get better. Just practice more. Be better at the game.
No, but here's the thing, Jake. If you do that, once you make it so hard, people stop competing. Because you make it something that you tell the average person, it is not possible for you to get an invite unless you go to every single regional. And you're already asking people this year to go to an average of 4 to 6 regionals to qualify. And so I can understand if you basically take that carrot that seemed achievable, you've given me a number, you've given me a number of events that I can go to try to hit that number. I know the path forward. If you then take that and say, we want to make Worlds super exclusive, we're going to make it top 32 or top 64 from every region, I can understand that from like if you want this to be like professional sports perspective, right? But it's hard to then reconcile that with a player base to be like, okay, well, I don't have the funds, I don't have the resources, I don't have the time to travel to every regional to stay in that top 64 hunt for an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if you're one of these players like an Alex Schmansky or a JW Krewall, right? Like one of these players who's a really good player, they've earned invites most likely, but they can't go to every regional because they have a job, they have life. They're like, I can only go to 6 regionals, but I could qualify before. But now, if it's going to be, we don't know what X is going to be, but if X is that much smaller, then you have what I would consider top players that also don't qualify. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, I think, where you get into this really weird territory of like, the only people who can qualify are the people who have enough time to treat it as a profession purely.
I do. I'm so man, I feel like I'm so on the whatever side. Cause like if I want Worlds to be a spectacle, I want it to be the best event of the year. I want it to be the hardest event of the year. I want it to be the most successful like showcase of talent and whatnot. And the thing about Worlds now is, qualify for Worlds now. You think about this last year, you think about probably this year. Um, when was the last time we had somebody win Worlds that was somebody that we'd never really heard of before?
Hmm.
Right? Like think back to like last Worlds winners. I don't even know if I would even consider like Vance Kelly. Like I would consider him somewhat of a known individual
Yeah.
um in the space before Worlds. I think of like gosh, I forget his name, playing Waylord EX.
Hmm.
I think he was one of the more unknown players at the time when Jason Klaczynski won Worlds against Waylord EX. Was that Worlds? Oh gosh, maybe I'm
I don't know.
misremembering. Anyways, so like I want Worlds, like Worlds will naturally at the top level, like after day 1 and after day 2, be those top players more likely than not. It is so difficult to high roll your way through the Worlds, right? We've seen it time and time again. But like I think about my sports days, and well, I'm still in my sports days. Sean, USA swimming at the time of this recording, at least, so kind of dating the podcast a little bit. USA Olympic trials for swimming had been going on. They just wrapped up recently. I'm just going to take the 100-meter butterfly, right? Women's 100-meter butterfly. How many people do you think across the United States, 15 and older women, qualifying for Olympic trials, just the national championships, basically? Olympic trials in the 100-meter butterfly.
I mean, probably not that many. Maybe like 300.
76.
Ooh, not very many.
76 people out of all the people that swim
Yeah,
across the entire country.
that competitively
How
swim.
many
Yeah.
people, Sean, qualify for the Olympics? Basically the world championships
Yeah.
out of Olympic trials.
I mean, I think it's probably only like what, 5 or 6?
Two.
Okay.
So it's one of those things
Well,
that like
in butterfly, right? That's not all.
yeah,
of
it's
swimming.
it's in that specific
Yeah.
that specific event. So it's a little bit different, but like, for me as a swimmer, like my best event was the 200 fly growing up. But the thing that I really want Pokemon to understand for people who, and it's okay if you have the opinion of like, man, I hate this potential change. If they do this change, it's going to be so awful. Like, because that's a valid opinion, right? I would be mad too if, I was trying to chase a World's invite and, I was so close and I had this like one system and then Pokemon was like, oh, we're going to make it harder now.
Yeah.
Like that sucks. That does suck. I get it. But going into this new system, like I want people to understand that there is so much more to just getting a Worlds invite. Like I think a lot of people put too much value on a Worlds invite. Like it's okay to have a goal to go to Worlds, but I think people are so centralized around like it's a Worlds invite or nothing
Mm-hmm.
right? Or it's a bad season or something like that. Like when I was going through swimming, they had these different levels that you qualified for, right? You got a certain time in this event, you qualified for the state championships. You got this certain time, you qualified for the regional championships, you know, with the region, the Midwest championships when I was growing up in Indiana. You know, you do this, you qualify for nationals, you qualify for Olympic trials, right? These different levels that had these accomplishments, which is why I hope Pokemon brings back like potentially this like states, right? They had states several years
Mm-hmm.
ago, before we started playing, um, in like 2018, 2019, that I think would fit well. Cause I don't think Pokemon really has like, in this current system that they have before we get into the next season, this current system, I don't think there's much to really like aim for players besides worlds, right? Like you can aim to win a cup, you can aim to win a challenge, but I think there needs to be more incentives and more goals that people can make that are attainable, that that aren't just worlds invites, to make this game continue to grow, make this game continue to be successful. Because I think the player base is too like, I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, I mean, it is kind of a big deal, but I don't think it's that big of a deal
Yeah,
if it gets harder.
it's a weird one. I think Pokemon does need to balance from a logistical standpoint, right? If
Hmm.
you set a fixed number, then you can plan your event based around that fixed number. Now, what I will say is, if you do a fixed number, what we do know is that not everybody who gets an invite to Worlds can attend
Yeah.
because of financial reasons, right? So there's always 10 to 20% of people who get an invite and can't go. So if Pokemon did the X number and they plan around that, they have to know, and they'll have statistics, but they'll know that a certain percentage of those people just won't be able to go for
Hmm.
whatever reason. So they'll plan for that as their maximum capacity, and then they'll understand that they won't always hit that. But in order to run a tournament where you have like a kind of number of results, like we have enough players that the field is large enough that it doesn't feel like too small of an event for Worlds. You need it to still feel like a big event, and I think that's maybe the big difference between Olympics and Pokemon TCG, which is that like
Yeah.
people want to watch 8 or 9 rounds. In order to have 8 or 9 rounds, you statistically need to have 600-700 players minimum,
Hmm.
right? So there, you do have to keep it open enough to meet those thresholds. So I will be interested to see if they do go to this new system. Maybe they'll keep it the same. Who knows? But the total numbers this year that of people that qualified, and I'm going to pull up the other stat now because we're kind of just moving into it. The total number of people who qualified in Masters. I'm not going to get into juniors and seniors. They're awesome, but it's a whole other ball game there.
Hmm.
But roughly 1,300 players qualified for Worlds. Of that, we can maybe expect 1,000 to actually attend, maybe 1,100, somewhere around there. So if they do end up trying to decrease it, I could see them picking a number around 500 to 800, being like, this feels like a big enough event for a world championship. And then they'll just break down the top X based on that. But I don't know. It's yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. I do think that there could be an upside of if you don't make it a specific point threshold and you make it a top X. I think it will create a very clear divide for players where like some players who are maybe on the fence about getting a Worlds invite, they'll be very sweaty at like local events. They'll be very sweaty at early regionals. And until they realize it's no longer possible for them, they play very competitively. Whereas if you do a top X, whatever that number is, I think you'll have a lot of players who are like, I'm not going to be chasing that all season. And from the get-go, they'll just be like, I'm playing this for fun. And it maybe creates a better environment for local game stores
Hmm.
where there's not as much pressure on those local game stores for things like cups, especially. because yeah, lowering the best finish limit also reduces pressure on local game stores running a cup, because like you'll get players who like get really upset because they're like, I need these 50 points. I need it. I need it. And the more players who think they can get that 600, the more competitive those events become. So I don't know. That could be like a weird silver lining, is that like by saying that you create a very clear gulf at the beginning of a season. I don't know. It's a thought. Maybe they do top 128 for the US. Like that could
Mhm.
very well be the number.
I wouldn't even be surprised if it was like top 256, right? We saw 271 Masters, as you were saying, in the NA region for this past season. So like top 256, you talk about needing a certain amount of rounds, right? Before you get into like top cut standards. Top 256 wouldn't be that bad for me. Or if they feel like it's a too low of number, they could, what is 256? 512, right? They could go the top 512 people to get that kind of like it would probably be over like 700, 800 total then Masters in the world championships across all the regions combined. But it would give you that like 8-9 round structure
Yeah.
that you're looking for in there. So again, I mean, the best finish limit or the top X could be top 32, could be 512. We have no idea. It's all speculation. It's all rumor mill stuff that you can take with a grain of salt. But I would just say that I think Pokemon needs to have, other incentives that are not just qualifying for Worlds. I think they need to create a culture that is more than just that one thing. And I don't know where it starts. I don't have the answers, but
Yeah.
you
I
know,
agree though, because I do think that right now it feels like if you win a cup, there is something nice. You win a cup, maybe you get a play mat. That's cool. And you feel great that
mhm,
you win a cup. But outside of that, it does kind of feel like everything hinges around CP to go to Worlds.
mhm.
But people like little trophies. Like, what if for cups, they sent out like little trophies that you would win? I see all these
Well,
people who have like
they
the old
had,
states
I
trophies. Right.
I mean, they have or they used to in like 2019, right? Right before COVID. They had cups and challenges like first, second, third, fourth place cards that you would get,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I have some of those
And they
cards.
haven't, I do too. I have them in
Yeah.
some of my decks. My trophy, I think I have, yeah, one of my trophy cards up there graded.
Yeah.
Um, but like, yeah, I mean, I think they need to, start bringing stuff like that back. Again, I would love states, but I feel like that would be a monstrosity to try to organize and maintain. I don't know, with the big player base. I mean, you talk about day two events, I think, is organizing every single. I think this also may be a rumor, but I think is more reliable because you can call convention centers and ask. I think day two events is doing just about every single regional for the next season. Just
In
about
North America.
every, yeah, in North America at least, for the next season. So I don't know if you have other people do states. I don't know how states would look in terms of individual organizers, right? Because you probably have a lot of these states around the same time, or do you do them throughout or maybe do you do them
I
like throughout the season?
I don't think you can do states again because they're not going to have as many tournaments. So like what states get it, what states don't? Like you
Well,
just
you would just probably have it like one or like one state's tournament per state. So you'd have 50 of them. But they would just be at like different times throughout the year. I don't know. It's like
I yeah.
it's such a weird balance because like One Piece kind of has that. They have these like local store regionals that they just
Yeah.
announced that they're doing test runs for. And I think there's only like 20 or something like that. I'm probably misremembering. So it's not even once per state.
Yeah.
And they did like a lottery selection for it. So I don't know, but it's like a lower thing to be able to achieve and aim for that is not I mean, it's bigger than like a local cupper challenge, right, at your game store, but it's smaller than a regional. right? A like big time regional or IC or something like that. So I don't know. Like I don't know. I need lower things to aim for is the bigger thing. I don't want to just qualify for worlds and that's the only thing that I think about.
No, I think that's a very valid point, right? Which is like, look, if they're gonna make World something that truly is only for the best players in the world, like
Mhm.
no argument. It's just for the people who are very good and went to enough events, but like the people who are like taking this as a profession, right?
Mhm.
It's only for the people who can do that at a high level. Then yeah, I do think that they need to figure out some way to incentivize people to play competitively and reward them without it being the world's carrot. Because I
Mhm.
agree. I think the world's carrot has been too heavily used in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe longer than that. Because I know when you and I both started playing, there was a thought in my brain that like, oh, maybe one day I can go for a world's invite. It didn't feel that
Mhm.
hard. It felt like, oh, I can just go to enough events. If you're a decent player and you go to enough events, you probably can qualify, right?
Mhm.
That's the reality. But I think once you take that out of the realm of possibility, give me something to fight for. If I'm not going to go for a
Yeah,
world's invite,
like
give me something.
yeah, like I mean, I was considering trying like if they before these sets of rumors came out, if they stuck with the points, because my job is a little bit more free than it has been ever before in terms of free time. I was going to try to potentially go for worlds in terms of getting enough points, but if this changes, that would definitely probably be it for me in terms of going to World. So I'm not going to be mad if they maintain the same, but I'm also not going to be mad if they decide to make a change because I don't think the change that they would make would be bad in the
Well,
different options because there's only so many ways to do it. I feel like.
yeah. And they do need to, I think it's fair that they need to also come back with a structure that gives them something to plan around and a fixed
Hmm.
number. You can plan around that. But
Yeah.
top, 600 CP, what if next year 1,000 people in the US get it? And then all of a sudden they're like, how do we plan for this? Fair enough, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's our long-winded takes on World's invite systems and everything. I will also say, Jake mentioned that we tried to guess how many people would
Oh yeah. Yeah.
qualify for
Yeah.
Worlds. Jake, what were the numbers?
So once again, the number of masters that qualified this year in North America for the championships is 271. Just to give you a number, refresh you as we talk about it. One of us went over and one of us went under the number. Are we going to do it like Price is Right style where the winner is
Oh,
the
well, then I would
lower
have just guessed
number?
one. Then you could have just guessed one. No, I mean, we don't have
The
to say either of us was correct, but it was interesting, the
yeah.
number. Yeah.
So Sean, back in December 18th of 2023, Sean had said that 350 masters were going to qualify for Worlds. So he was over in that mark, being 271. I said 134. So I was about halfway there. So I definitely had the farther away number. Sean was closer in a sense than I was. Sean was about 80, less than 80 people off, about 79 or so. If my math is correct. I was pretty much double.
Yeah.
I was less than half of the people
Yeah.
in that number. So just something that Sean had brought up before the podcast that I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
To I was really close to the juniors number. If you took my juniors number, it's really close, only
Yeah.
about less than 20 off. But no, for masters, I specifically remember it being masters when we talked about the points. So
So
not too
confirmed
bad overall.
confirmed that the new changes next year are all being run by Jake. He wants fewer players to qualify.
Yeah, fewer players. It's and.
No.
Do you want one more hot take before we end this podcast?
Yeah, one more hot take to leave everybody with.
I am a firm. I don't know. This might be more along the lines of like I'm just a strict player. If you don't get day 2 at a regional, I don't think you should get points.
I'm not against that.
I
'Cause
don't
I'm
know.
just like,
That's probably not like really a hot take. And I think if you can get points by not day twoing originals, by all means, if that's the rule, you should abide
yeah,
by the
sure.
rule. But I don't know. I don't think you should get. I don't think you should get day points if you don't day two.
All right.
I don't know. That's my thinking.
Well, roast us in the comments, roast us in the Discord on all of our hot takes.
Feel free. Yeah. Feel free to say, Jake, God, you're so ruthless. Like, yeah, you don't want anybody to have fun playing the game. You know what?
No.
Maybe you're right. I don't know.
If Jake had his druthers, it would be Tord Reklev versus Sander Wojcik in the finals of Worlds every year.
Best of 52, you know. Like...
Right. Exactly. That would be the official Metapod Worlds invite. Would be those two players every single year.
Well, they kind of had before, I guess mentioning this, they did kind of have that, right? Like when COVID first hit, they had like the
the Players Cup or whatever.
They had they had the invitational of like the top players. Yeah, they kind of have had a world championship with this. That was really the test run for if you want to get your tinfoil hat theories on. But anyways, we're done. We're done. I gotta go to work today. You know, thank you so much for listening to the Metapod podcast, Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. Again, if you want to discuss your own ideas and opinions, the link to the official Metapod Discord will be in the description as always. But aside from that, I'm Jake, that's Sean. Thanks for listening to us yap, and hope you listen to us next week.